Today, I want to introduce a new book as part of our principles at Orange Capital Partners. It's David Deutsch's The Beginning of Infinity. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's October 24, 2020. This is Krim Delko. Today is Saturday. There's no update. The Beginning of Infinity was written in 2018 or published in 2018 by David Deutsch, a physicist and quantum computing specialist from the UK. He's a very interesting character, and some of you might think, how come a popular science book makes it into the book of principles for a hedge fund? And I want to explain this in further detail in this episode. So we have three principles that we base our action on, that we base our work on. The three books are 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, The Innovation Stack by Jim McKelvey, and The Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen. So this is a fourth book, and we have been struggling for a while now, thinking about introducing the book, and we have decided to do it. So David Deutsch, The Beginning of Infinity, is officially now the fourth pillar of Orange Capital's principles of investing. And I want to do two things today. One is explain what the book says, and a second, why we introduce it, and more importantly, what is the differentiating factor? Is this really a linearly independent vector that we're adding to our vector space, or are we not just adding a book that is saying things that the other three books are already saying? So those are the two goals. And I want to start with the first side. So what is actually the beginning of infinity? In a nutshell, the beginning of infinity is saying that human creativity is able to do everything that is allowable under the laws of physics. So things are either possible or impossible. There is no in between. There is no mysteries. There is no anything that we can't do. Humans have the ability, through the ability to create theories, or explanatory power, as David Deutsch calls it, to do everything that the laws of physics allow them to do. So either it's possible or it's not possible. Let that sink in a little bit. So for example, the laws of physics tell us we cannot go faster than the speed of light. So there will never be a business, there will never be an investment, there will never be an achievement that humans can brag about that creates something which goes faster than the speed of light. We're not going to waste time with that. It's just not going to happen. This is impossible. Now, can we colonize Mars? Can we colonize a galaxy 5,000 light years away from us? The laws of physics tell us there's no particular reason why we shouldn't be able to do that. It's very difficult. It's unbelievably challenging. But the laws of physics tell us that there is no reason we cannot do that. Hence, there is a possibility that in many, many years, millions of years maybe, but at some point, we will be able to do it. So anything is possible that is not prohibited by the laws of physics. This is the groundbreaking insight of the beginning of infinity. David Deutsch goes on and talks about creation, creativity, human creativity, the knowledge, the Popperian epistemology of how knowledge is created, how creativity is created. He particularly distinguishes two types of creativity. He calls it biological and human. The biological creativity is selected through natural selection, and human creativity is selected to Popperian epistemology, i.e., when we come up with new explanatory ideas about things, then we test them in a Popperian way. So we try to criticize them, we try to falsify them, and then we finally come up with either it's working or it's not working. This is the way we create new ideas, or creation. Knowledge is created through explanatory power. Deutsch also talks about something that is very important for us in our podcast, the Not Even Wrong podcast, because the name Not Even Wrong comes from Wolfgang Pauli. Pauli said, you're not even wrong because your theory is not based on any kind of explanatory power. In order to be wrong, you have to have an explanation that I can actually test, or that I can relate to. So the explanation has to be relatable to the theory. For example, if I say winter is explained through the marriage of the goddess of winter with Zeus, this is the explanation for winter, you're not even wrong, because I can't, the marriage of the goddess of winter with Zeus has nothing to do with the fact that it's cold, that it's snowing, that the days are shorter. There's no relationship there, so you're not even wrong. However, if your explanation for winter is that the globe is tilted, that the sun hence shines in different ways, and that we have less sun in the winter and more sun in the summer, those are things that are directly related. The explanation is directly related to what we can test and observe, and therefore we can falsify the theory or not. So in a sense, this is very deep for us at Orange Capital Partners, because we believe that the success of investing follows the same trajectory. In order to earn the right to be wrong, you have to have an explanation for an investment which is directly related to the underlying fundamentals of your investment. So for example, if I invest in Tesla because Tesla is building an innovation stack based on a 0 to 1 time founder, and it's following the Clayton Christensen style disruptive dynamics, then I have a direct explanatory power between my explanation why it's a good investment and the fundamentals of the investment. However, if I invest in Tesla because I think the brand is strong, or they're very competitive, or things like that, those are not testable theses. There's nothing there. You can't falsify it. You can't say it's right or wrong. It just has nothing to do with each other, and that is fundamentally the reason why it's a bad explanation. So let's get back to David Deutsch now. David Deutsch, in his book The Beginning of Infinity, talks about the fact that anything which is not prohibited by the laws of physics can be done by humans, and that in order to do it, we have to use creativity, explanatory power, and that's the only way we can progress as humans. So why is this now a key pillar for Orange Capital Partners? Well, we have built our business on the premise that there is a way to innovate and create new markets and have large impact that we consider as good impact. This is our fundamental premise. We believe that wealth can only be created if something important and new happens, and it's, in our case, it's driven by technology. It doesn't have to be technology. It can be social. However, then it's a little bit more difficult where the wealth creation kicks in. So things like Martin Luther King, the US Revolution, the Bill of Rights, the ban of smoking in California, the drive towards renewable power in California. So there are social movements, cultural movements that are important also. But we at Orange Capital Partners focus on technological disruption. So it's technology driven. But what does technology mean? And here is where the rubber meets the road, where actually David Deutsch's book really has some tangible implications. You have an explanation for something scientific. You can actually explain why it's working, and therefore you're able to build something. This is exactly what Tesla is doing with the battery, the electric powertrain. There are other things where they're trying to, like the self-drive. That's still a bit of an open question, because I don't believe we don't have enough explanatory power to explain a self-driving car. Or as David Deutsch puts it in his book, if we cannot write an algorithm, that means we don't understand it. And I believe that Andrej Karpathy and his team at Tesla are trying very hard to develop algorithms to solve tasks within the self-driving space, but they're not there yet. So this is a bit of a try and error. We're still iterating. We're still figuring out how to get to sort of a universal knowledge of how to build an intelligent robot. But this is exactly what David Deutsch is saying. There are no laws of physics that prohibit us to do that, and there is a good chance that we can actually do it. The question for us investors is timing, and this is our value added. Like I always said, our one degree of freedom is, where do we invest in? And if we follow David Deutsch's thesis that everything is possible, we can colonize Mars, we can colonize Andromeda, we can colonize the Milky Way. I don't know, we can colonize. The question, of course, is timing. So are we ready for a decarbonized energy infrastructure? The answer from our perspective is yes. And this is why we're investing in Tesla. But now let's get back to the book and why we choose it as a pillar. We choose it as a pillar because we believe that the only way wealth can be generated, large wealth, by something where nobody has thought about it before, nobody's doing it, nobody has a good explanation for why that particular mission is accomplishable, and then somebody steps up and says, I can actually do it. For example, there is another mission that we strongly believe in, which is the one-shot therapy in medicine, which is driven by genetic manipulation, and that's why we invested in CRISPR. This is another long shot. It's a very, very bold thesis that, in our view, is beautiful, and we have the technology, we have an explanation for why it could work. We're not sure, again, with CRISPR, similarly to the self-drive at Tesla, there are plenty of reasons why we should be skeptical because we don't understand the underlying operating system of nature. So we're not clear that we have good explanations yet for, let's say, why a particular blood disease is happening, or why a particular eye disease or liver disease, and even things like nervous diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. We don't have good explanations, but we're on the cusp of getting there thanks to CRISPR and gene editing and the ability to do genetics in a more digital way. We can do much better research. So we're developing tools that enable us to iterate and get better at finding an explanation for why certain genetic diseases happen, and then we can potentially fix them. So back to David Deutsch's book again. The beginning of infinity says that there are only possible and impossible things. The impossible things we're not bothering with at Orange Capital Partners. Anything else is possible. And now the question is, the more unlikely it seems, or to use Peter Thiel's words, if you have a secret, something that only you believe in and most other people disagree with you, if you have something like that, you can then start trying to explain why you think you can do it. So when Elon Musk said he wants to colonize Mars, that was a secret because everybody thought he's crazy. But he had an explanation for how he can get there. He can build a reusable rocket. He can build a business to launch satellites. Then he can build a business called Starlink, which does terrestrial internet through satellites. And then he can use that money to start building an interplanetary species and eventually colonize Mars. Those are explanations that start making sense, that are illuminating our imagination. They're not explanations like the winter example I used, where we're just saying, oh, because we're smart, we can go to Mars, or because if we get lucky, we can go to Mars. Those are bad explanations because they don't relate to the actual act of getting there. But in Elon Musk's case, the explanation is very plausible. The same way with Tesla, it starts becoming very plausible once you start putting all the explanations together. And the explanations in our world, in David Deutsch's world, are in the business world are called startups. They're called business ideas, startups. So Musk has said several times that Tesla is an accumulation of startups, and all these startups are, you can see them as explanations for why he can succeed in building a decarbonized transportation infrastructure. The startup in the battery space, in the powertrain space, in the supercharging space, in the software delivery over the air space, in the self-drive space, in the manufacturing, the ability to manufacture low-cost, high-quality, intelligent, fancy, modern, super interesting cars. The ability to have a global logistics network, the ability to have an insurance which is disruptive. They use the insurance to then drive self-drive subscription and combine self-drive with insurance to lower the cost of insurance and increase satisfaction rate of customers. There is all these explanations which eventually lead towards a $1 trillion company which can actually decarbonize the energy infrastructure. So to summarize, David Deutsch's book, The Beginning of Infinity, is now officially part of our principal stack. The three other books are 0 to 1, The Innovation Stack, and The Innovator's Dilemma. The contribution of David Deutsch's book, The Beginning of Infinity, is that it gives us a philosophical background or a foundation on which we can build the thesis that is then propagated in 0 to 1, which is that you can do something unique, something very implausible for most people. Thiel calls it a secret. You can actually do that because that's the only way according to Deutsch, that we progress. He calls that creativity. Explanatory knowledge can only be created if you take yourself the freedom to think unconventionally, out of the box, in a different way about the problem, and then you set it up in such a way that it can be tested in a Popperian epistemological process, i.e., it gets tested in the marketplace. So, for example, Tesla has a secret in terms of self-driving. This is a good example. And the Popperian epistemological process is simply the marketplace. So Tesla comes out with a self-drive technology, and there is Waymo and others, but particularly Waymo. And the question now is, does Tesla really have a secret, or is this just a bunch of stuff that everybody can do? It will be shown in the marketplace. There's a risk that Tesla actually loses out against Waymo, and Waymo does what they did with other parts of the software stack where they just gave it for free and then destroyed other competitors. Or it could be a little bit like the Apple Android system, where yes, Google makes all these efforts, comes out, gives everything for free, but the iOS is so much better that it still thrives, and Apple is a lot more valuable than Google. So we'll see. This is Popperian epistemological process here. Is there a secret or not? Is the secret in the integration of the hardware and the software or not? We don't know. It's an explanatory power that we have. We can explain that. We can say Tesla is better than Waymo because it's integrated. They have an advantage because they have data. They have actual customers. They're testing. This is all great, but we also have the luxury of testing it. We will see it in the marketplace. So this is a real example of a Deutschian explanatory power, which then translates into the marketplace and gets tested. And then we either advance as a species, or we don't advance, in a sense that, well, we just have another product which is just a Me Too product, and it really doesn't get us this self-drive technology that we're all striving for. So we're adding David Deutsch's The Beginning of Infinity to our stack of principles, to our principle stack, because the beginning of infinity is the foundation that explains why the other three principles actually are relevant. So David Deutsch's book, The Beginning of Infinity, gives us a foundation and explains why the other three, 0 to 1, the innovation stack and the innovator's dilemma, actually are relevant. Thank you.